All right, I want you to notice verse 20 of Proverbs 26. It says, "Where no wood is, there the fire goeth out. So where there is no talebearer, the strife ceaseth. As coals are to burning coals, and as wood to fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. The words of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down into the innermost parts of the belly." And here in Proverbs 26, we have a very powerful passage, all dealing with the sins of the tongue. And this is a subject, as a pastor, I think I need to preach on it at least once a year, just because this is one of the easiest things that any of us can fall into, and this is one of the biggest things that can kill a church, is just tongues getting out of control in the church. And so this is a very important thing that we definitely need a good reminder of. It's just important. That's just for some preventative maintenance, because we are all very likely to get in trouble in this area. And so the title of my message tonight is Poisoning the Well. And poisoning the well, you've probably heard that term before, but it's a type of ad hominem where irregular negative information is preemptively presented to an audience to discredit whatever the opponent is about to say. So again, if I'm going to have a debate with somebody and I want people to listen to me and not listen to them, what I could do, I could just make sure I present a better argument. I could make sure I present truth and I expose their error, which is what you're supposed to do in a debate. Or I could make everybody think negatively about that person so they won't want to listen to them and they won't want to agree with them. And then that's what we would call poisoning the well. So what I would do is I would say a whole bunch of bad things about that individual so you all will think negatively. And those things could be true. They could be false. For example, this is an example they had in the definition. Before you listen to her, I should remind you that she's been charged with embezzlement. So, or a poison well argument is unfavorable information, be it true or false, about a person is presented by another. And another thing it would say is like, before you listen to my opponent, may I remind you he's been in jail. And so that's a very common thing. Right now, we're in a presidential debate season. And so, anything before Donald Trump speaks. You remember what he did on January 6th? Like, we're talking about the economy right now. Yeah, but he started an insurrection. Well, here's the thing. Does this policy make sense? We want to talk about this policy, but no, they want to distract. And, they do that on both sides. Biden's got dementia. That doesn't mean, that this is a bad policy. But those are the things that we do to kind of poison the well. Don't listen to anything he says. We do the same thing in the theological world. We do the same thing in the theological world when we want to have a discussion maybe about a particular subject, how to interpret something in the Bible. What do? Rather than just prove somebody wrong, let's go find something bad about them theologically, and then we have like the cancel culture mentality. And so instead of us just admitting, yeah, I was wrong on that, well, did you know that this guy is a Catholic? Or this guy is a Pentecostal, or, we'll just throw some kind of negative thing. We're poisoning the well with that person so we can distract from the actual argument. And so the reality is this idea of poisoning the well. This is something that people often do to those around them as a way so they can gain influence. So people will respect them more than they respect everyone else, and they have a tendency with their mouth to go around and a lot of people don't even know they're doing it, but casting negative thoughts and negative feelings on everyone around them, and it is a very wicked thing to do. And everything I'm going to talk about tonight are going to be sins too, that, we're all probably guilty of these things. We've all probably done these things before. The scriptures we're going to look at are going to reveal truths about each of us that may not make us comfortable, but we need to understand where we're wrong. If we understand where we are wrong, then we can we're in a better position to fix ourselves. And do we want to fix ourselves? I want to fix everybody else. And you know what? That's a problem. You're the person I'm talking to tonight. There's always that person that, we would have a great world if everybody would just fix themselves. We would have a great church if everybody else in the church would get right. Nobody ever wants to fix themselves. And that's how we actually make the world a better place. We got to start where we actually have authority, where we have influence with ourselves. But that's usually the last place anybody wants to start to work. And so while the sins we commit with our tongue are wicked, And the things we're going to be talking about tonight are wicked. Most of the time, we don't even realize we're doing these things. We really don't. It's just a part of our nature. We need to remember our hearts are deceitful and above all things and desperately wicked. You are naturally, you might think you're a good-hearted person, but if you're not careful, you will find yourself doing these things without even realizing it. It is the easiest thing in the world to do. And can we just lose our halos tonight and not act like we don't have a problem in these areas? Everybody struggles with this stuff. And if you can't admit that, you're in big trouble. You're probably one of the biggest problems in this area. This is so easy to do. So I'm not trying to be mean to anybody tonight. This is something we all need. I hope tonight to maybe help you put up a few guardrails in your life to keep, so you won't do these things without realizing it. This is why we have standards. This is why we have guardrails. We have areas where we know, I know I'm not supposed to be doing this. For example, too, we all know that gossip is bad. Okay? We all know gossip is bad. But at the same time, does that mean we're never allowed to utter another person's name from our mouth? Well, of course not. And there's a fine line somewhere between gossip and a prayer request, or something like that. What we need to learn to do is just say, all right, here's where I'm going to make sure I don't cross. Here's some boundaries I'm going to set in my life so I will not be guilty of these things, because gossip is a devastating thing when it happens to people. I mean, and I am not even going to pretend I am immune to these things, okay? And again, being in the ministry as long as I have, having an online platform, of course I've dealt with a lot of this stuff, and sometimes I become so numb to these things, I almost start to wonder, like, am I a psychopath? Shouldn't this stuff be bothering me? But it's like, I'm not feeling anything right now, and it scares me a little bit, because it's like, but again, I tell myself, and I hope this is true, that I read a book years ago. In fact, I was thinking about this book this week. I don't remember who wrote it. Somebody gave it to me when I was 19 years old. I read a book about reactions. I believe it was called Your Reactions Are Showing. And I remember when I read that book, I was like, I saw a ton of areas. Like, I felt like the guy wrote the book about me in a lot of ways, and it embarrassed me, even though I knew the guy didn't know me. And I learned, it's like, I need to stop doing all this stuff. And I fixed a lot of stuff in my life that I think helped, because, again, we don't want to just react to things. We don't want to just, we get ourselves in trouble when we do that. And so, as a result of that, I've set guardrails up in my life. There was one time where, there's been many times where I've gotten myself in trouble by reacting to things, but I do remember one situation in particular where I was greatly rewarded for doing the right thing. But I found out somebody in the church had said something, and it ticked me off. It wasn't here, it was the last church. I mean, I was mad. And I was all ready to go to church that night, and I was going to confront this individual. And this guy too, looking back, he was one of the nicest, easygoing guys. I can't believe I was this mad at this person. But I was that mad at the person. And then somebody just told me, you know what? If it was that bad, you can wait till next week to confront him. You're too mad right now. You're too mad. And I did. It's like, next week. I forced myself, next week I'm confronting this individual about what I'm angry about. And I remember after 1 week, I was just like, I don't think this is worth confronting him over. And not only did I not confront him, but I remember thinking, I am so glad I didn't. I would have created a lot more trouble had I not done it. And it really helped me just learning, hey, when you're going to really go nail somebody and confront somebody and start the Matthew 18 process, I think it's Matthew 18, wait a week. If everybody would just wait a week on that, it would solve a lot of embarrassment. And so you got to set those guardrails up, because we can all get in trouble when it comes to these things. And so let's look at some things here in Proverbs 26 I want to point out, very important. Verse 17 says, he that passeth by and meddleth with strife belonging not to him is like one that taketh a dog by the ears. The first thing we need to learn is, the first thing we need to remember is we've got to learn how to keep our mouths shut about things that are outside our area of authority. Do you want to know why people run their mouths? Do you want to know why people gossip? It's a form of control, is what it is. It's a way that we control things. And a lot of times too, we don't have the guts to go and say something to the person. So we say it to other people, hoping maybe it'll get to them that way. And it's our way of influencing. When I worked in the Christian school, that is why I'm missing hair, ladies and gentlemen. After I got out of the Christian school, I stopped losing hair. And it was the Christian school, being a youth director, that did it. But one thing I hated, and just lessons for everybody here too, is women in the church were always, when they didn't like stuff that was going on in the school, they always they would talk amongst other women, knowing that one of them would eventually tell my wife, and that she would probably tell me. And that would just tick me off. It's like, you know what? I'm the one in charge of this. They should be talking to me, not everyone else, and especially not my wife. And so when those messages would get relayed to me through my wife, you know what I would do about those things? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because I don't want people thinking that they can control me in that way. That's not how things are supposed to work. That's not how you should be doing things. And it would anger me greatly. But again, the excessive running of the mouth, it's a form of control. That's what it's all about. And we just need to understand there are areas where, of course, we're all going to have opinions. We are all going to have thoughts that are going to go through our head, but those thoughts, those that we think should never come out of our mouth, because it could do a whole lot of damage, and we have absolutely no authority to do anything in these areas. And people run their mouths and they state their opinions as a form of control and influence. But there are some things we have no business getting involved in. We're taking a dog by the ears. We have no business trying to gain influence, no matter how much we think we know, no matter how right we think we are. We don't need to do this. For example, if I see a husband and wife having an argument, okay, and have you ever been there before where you were maybe out in public somewhere and you heard an argument and you're listening to what's going on? Okay. I mean, I just heard one the other day at County Market. I was coming out of there, and a husband and wife were going at it, and you get entertained, you listen, to what they're saying. Now, one thing I did not do, I did not get involved. Because, now, I had an opinion about the situation. I actually, normally I side with the guy, right? But I was actually on the lady's side, because this guy was being an idiot. He was being belligerent. But at the same time, if I would have said something to that guy, do you think I would have made that lady's situation any better? No, you know what I would have done? I would have infuriated that dude. I would have gotten in my car and drove off. He would have gotten in his car and drove off. Now he's more angry, and guess who's got to deal with it? His poor wife. I just made the situation worse. Yeah, but I was right in what I said. No, but actually you weren't, because it was not your place to say anything and get involved in this situation. And I've been in that situation many times. I remember a situation years ago where I went to go visit somebody, and they were going through some pretty severe marriage problems during that time. And listen, I do not believe in divorce, but sometimes I don't blame people, but I still don't believe in it. But I'm telling you, I ended up showing up in a situation, and a wife came along, and let me tell you something, she was in the wrong. She was behaving horribly. And I'm telling you, when I saw the things that I saw, again, I almost changed my position on divorce, because I was like, this has got to be justifiable. And I didn't. But boy, I'm telling you, she was wrong. And then she started, and I'm just trying to stay out of the situation. It was awkward. I did not want to be there. I feel bad for the guy. He's embarrassed. And then she turns to me and starts saying stuff to me. And let me tell you, I had some thoughts. And I believe I was right in what I was thinking about this woman. But I realized at that moment, while I could defend this man who I believe is in the right, if I do that, I will make his situation so much worse. You know why? Because I'm going to go home, and then he's going to have to deal with this harpy that I just made even more mad. And I realized, this is not a situation where I can make things better by giving my 2 cents. And she did. She started asking me questions that were these clearly pointed questions, just trying to put down her husband. And I did. I wanted to say, man, if I were you, or if I were your husband, I would be on the corner of the housetop tonight, because it's better to be in the corner of a housetop than in large halls with a brawling woman. I'd rather dwell in the wilderness than dwell with you. But I didn't say any of those things. I would have been right. I'd have had Bible for that. But I would not have helped the situation. And so you know what I did? I kept my mouth shut. And that was no fun. I had so many things I wanted to say to her and about her that were right. But I couldn't do that. I've been in that situation many times in my life where I've walked in on situations that were terrible, and these things, they were not my place. I did not have any authority. I could only make things worse. I've been in churches before where I've seen things with church members. I've observed things with other church members, and I have made judgments about that church and that church member. But it's not my church. And you know what I've never done? I've never gone to somebody else's church and tried to run their people off. And there's been situations too where I've had people pegged. And I've even warned the pastor. I was like, hey, I would keep an eye on that one. And then sure enough, they cause problems later. But you know what? I could have went in that church and I could have told these people off. I could have told them how pathetic and how sorry they were. But I would have been wrong in doing that. You know why? Because it was not my place. I'm not the pastor of that church. I have no authority in that church. I am not the leader of your home. I am not the leader of these other situations. And sometimes, if I open my mouth, I'm only going to make the situation worse, and I'm probably going to get myself in trouble too. Now I'm in the middle of a conflict that was not mine. I've made it worse because I opened my mouth. And just because you're right factually does not mean it was right for you to open your mouth. And we've got to learn that we've got to keep our mouths shut in areas that are outside our authority. But sometimes we just can't. You know why? Because we have control issues. We have control issues. There are some thoughts, there are some ideas, there are some opinions that should never come out of your mouth, because the only thing that you can do by stating those things is causing strife. So for example, if I think, okay, and I am not thinking this, but if I think that one of you ladies have an ugly hairdo, that should never come out of my mouth. You know why? Because I will only be able to cause hurt. If I'm talking about your ugly hairdo, all I'm going to do is I'm going to make other people think negatively about her. Man, when she does her hair like that, it just annoys the fire out of me and it bugs me. And then now, every time you come to church with that hairdo, everybody knows, wow, pastor's annoyed right now. And now they're all noticing it. You see, I've literally poisoned the well by me speaking of that. And folks, it does not matter if I like or don't like your hairdo. You're not my wife. And so the only person I can even talk to you about, I should talk to you about that, is my wife, so she knows not to do a hairdo like that. That's it. And again, sometimes we get too critical. And I've had to learn things as a parent over the years. Years ago, we had somebody in our church who was way too old to be this way, but he was past age where you should have green snot coming out of your nose all the time. But he always had green snot coming out of his nose. And so anytime our boys would have snot coming out of their nose, instead of referring to it as snot or boogers, we would say, like, Tommy has a, and we would say this person's name. It was just me and my wife. Okay, we're not hurting anybody when we do that. Okay, I know that's terrible. We're not hurting anybody. Nobody ever got hurt when we did that until one day. Our boys start getting a little bit older, and we're sitting in the car riding home, and then all of a sudden Tommy says, Mom, oh, gross, Jason has a, and he said this person's name. And I freaked out. I panicked. And I yelled at Tommy. And I was like, what are you doing? I was like, you don't say that. And then he started bawling his head off. And then I was just like, and then I was like, you know where he got that? and I realized, and I panicked that day because I realized, if somebody around the church heard him calling snot coming out of a nose the name of this person, that would hurt their feelings. And that's not nice. That's not right. But when it was just something I did. And I realized that day, it's like, hey, our kids are getting to the age where they're repeating stuff we say. We got to watch what we say a little bit more. And of course, and I had to say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have yelled at you for that, but don't say that anymore. And we had to quit referring to snot as the name of this individual. I will not repeat that name from the pulpit or after church. And you don't know, you know him anyway. Because even though this person is all grown, I wouldn't want to hurt their feelings. So it was one of those things that, you might think something's private, but you never know when a little bird is going to go and tell somebody somewhere. And so we got to watch out for that kind of thing. And again, we have these thoughts, but sometimes it's just better to keep them right there in your head. You don't have to say it. And when you do, a lot of times it's a control thing. We all have negative thoughts that cross our mind. We think somebody's ugly. We think they look stupid. We think the song was bad. You thought the sermon was bad. But you don't have to say these things. You don't have to express, and they might even be true. But at the end of the day, is it any of your business? But it's so hard for some people to keep their mouth shut. We feel the need to speak on these things so we can influence. And that's why we say the things we do on social media. Why do I get on Facebook and say I think Joe Biden has dementia? I say that so everybody will think negatively about him and will be less likely to vote for him. Well, yeah, but when you say negative things about Trump? I say negative things about Trump too, so everybody will realize the solution to all your problems is not the politicians, but me and my opinion. That's what shapes the world. That's what affects the world. That's why we do these. Isn't that really why we do these things? You have the people that are hardcore against everybody. Like, I'm sorry, Tommy McMurtry's not on the ballot. But we think we should be. And you could write my name in, by the way. No, but I wouldn't want that job. But we do these things to influence. We do this so we can lower people's opinions about another person. And the more we can lower the opinions of other people, the more it elevates everybody's opinion of ours in our mind. But all of these things are wrong. And so just understand, you publicly speaking about things that are completely outside your realm of authority. If they are something that can cause hurt to other people, you absolutely should not say them. And if you do, it's because you have a control problem. And you need to get over yourself and realize that, you know what? I might think this woman treats her husband bad and that she's disrespectful, but is it my place to straighten her out? It absolutely is not. In fact, if I run my mouth here, I can probably only make things worse. And we've got to have some discernment in these areas. And there are many times where we are only capable of making things worse by speaking, and we don't need to do that. And that is an example of us meddling with strife, belonging not to us. And it's like taking a dog by the ears. Look at verse 18. As a madman who casteth firebrands, arrows, and death, so is the man that deceiveth his neighbor and saith, am not I in sport? And what's this talking about right here? This is people who get busted for speaking things that they shouldn't speak, but then they just try to say, well, I didn't mean anything by it. It's like, don't go up to the ugly person and say, you're really ugly. Just kidding. Obviously, you're just trying, you're saying that so as not to be held accountable. Kids do that often. When they get busted for saying something about their brothers and sisters, I was just kidding. It's like, no, you weren't. And the reason we know you weren't is because what you said was probably true. but that makes it worse. You shouldn't be saying these things. And so, the words you speak, they can hurt people greatly, and we have a responsibility to be careful with our words. I mean, all of us. Folks, even, and little kids, okay, obviously, we have to teach them tact. Okay, I remember there was a situation one time, I was sitting at a table with a couple different missionaries, and one of the missionaries was rather overweight, and another missionary's kid, he was probably about 5 years old, he was just sitting there eating, and he looked at that missionary and he said, you're really fat. And it was so funny. I'll never forget the reaction of the father of that, and the other missionary, he was real good about it, but I'm sure it probably hurt his feelings a little bit. Do you know little kids can hurt adults' feelings? Especially when they say things that are true. And I remember the dad just sitting there and he just sat there for like 30 seconds. And then finally no filter. These kids have no filter. And then it was the funniest reaction. He was so embarrassed by it. I remember one time one of my sister's friends was over and we had this elderly lady that would stay with us a lot. We would help. And I remember she just looked there and she's like, Mrs. Palmer, you are very old. And the lady just, she just laughed about it. But again, Parents, you need to train your children to be careful about the things that they say, because again, words are very powerful, and even a little child can hurt someone's feelings, and you better watch it too, because what if that critical thing that child says is a little too specific, maybe it's a little too intelligent for them to form that in their mind, and people are going to know, they probably heard that from mommy and daddy. You got to watch out for that. Otherwise, your kid's going to be doing what we were afraid Tommy was going to do when he announced Jason Snot in the name of a person. You got to watch out for that kind of thing. So typically, these words that are said, they may be true, but it doesn't mean they should have been said. So if someone's ugly, there's no reason for you to say that except to poison the well. Why are you talking about this person's looks? You have no authority there. There's nothing you can do about it. You're not a plastic surgeon. You have no way that you can help these people. You speaking about these negative facts about them, all it's doing is causing people to think negatively about them. You're poisoning the well. You don't need to do that. It's wrong. Verse 20, where no wood is, there the fire goeth out. So where there is no talebearer, the strife ceaseth. As coals are to burning coals, as wood to fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. And so just like, again, fire, you've got to add things to it. You got to add wood for it to continue burning. You got to add coals, and that talebearer. You know what they're doing? They're always trying to keep the fire spreading. They're always trying to keep the gossip spreading. And that person speaking things they shouldn't be speaking, they spread their poison to other people, which only makes a negative situation worse. Sometimes there's just bad situations. Sometimes people are going through things that is really bad, that is really sinful, but maybe they're working on it. But either way, the more we talk about it, the worse it's going to be. And there's a time and a place to talk about some stuff, but there's also a time to just keep our mouth shut about it. And sometimes you do. As fathers, you're just going to have to make an executive decision in your home, and you're going to have to declare to your wife and your children, we do not speak of these things. We are not going to get involved in this situation. And often that kind of thing happens, where we'll find out about maybe some kind of drama going on in another church, or some kind of drama going on with family members and things like that. And it's the most natural thing to talk about it, be concerned about it. You find out about marriage problems, somebody going through divorce or whatever. You do. You get concerned and you want to talk about it, but often there are situations where we're not in any position to help, and we could potentially make things worse. And so there have been times I've had to say it. I've had to tell my family, you guys stay out of this situation. Maybe there's something going on with somebody that they're close to, somebody they know. Stay away from this situation. This is an ugly situation. This is a nasty situation. Sometimes there's things, there's been times, there's been really difficult situations in other churches. And as a pastor, of course, you pay attention to those things and you think, what would I do in that situation? And we always have opinions about it, and we think, this is what I would do, and this would straighten out all the problems. But at the same time, I'm not in that situation. It's not my problem. No, and that's the reason too, when I go into other churches and I see people and I'm like, I think these people are bad news. I don't go trying to influence the pastor and telling him what to do, because I don't know all the information. It's not my place to do it. I might be misreading the situation. I might be right on the money. Either way, if I'm not in a position to make things better by speaking about it, I should keep my mouth shut about it, because I can only potentially make things worse. Sometimes too, especially in couples problems, whether it be dating couples, whether it be married couples that are going through marriage problems, one of the things that is difficult to overcome a lot of times is just the embarrassment of bad situations. And so the more people that get involved, the more unlikely it is that this is going to be resolved. That's why you must be very careful, okay? Men and women, if you're having a marriage problem, be careful who you go announcing those problems to and talking about those problems to. Because you might be able to get things right with your wife, but the problem is, if she finds out or he finds out that you've been telling everybody about it, now all of a sudden, pride's going to get involved, they're worried about that, and it's just, everything's worse. Everything ends up getting worse, and the more we speak of negative things, the worse it can be. Leviticus 19:15 says, "Ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. Thou shalt not respect the person of the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty, but in righteousness shalt thou judge thy neighbor. Thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer among thy people. Neither shalt thou stand against the blood of thy neighbor. I am the Lord. Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor, and not suffer sin upon him. Thou shalt not avenge, nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord." And we're all familiar with the loving your neighbor passage. We're all familiar with that. It's in that same passage where he's telling them not to go up and down as a talebearer. And let me tell you something, love will help you keep your mouth shut. If you actually love a person, if you actually care about them, if you actually want the situation to resolve itself, you know what it will help you do? It will help you keep your mouth shut. And I'm telling you right now, it's weird when people want to get involved in everybody's trouble and turmoil and difficult situations. And maybe it's just weird for me because being a pastor, sometimes I've got to get involved in ugly situations. Some of the things that I have sat through that in reality, I don't even think was appropriate for me to sit through. I had a situation one time where there was a husband and wife, they had a major conflict, a major blow up that was going to happen. I thought when they scheduled that meeting to come talk to me that I was going to be helping them deal with the fallout of some terrible news he was going to have to give his wife. But no, that was not what it was. Turned out he was going to give her the terrible news while I was there present. I don't think I should have been there for that. And I was there for that, and it was very awkward. It was terrible. It was a horrible situation. And you know what? And I helped, in every way I could. But let me tell you, it's not fun being in the middle of other people's problems. And if you want to get in the middle of other people's problems and try to straighten out everybody's problems, something's wrong with you. Be there for people when they are needed, but get out of the way when it's better for you to get out of the way. And some people can't do that. You know why? Because a lot of times they have control issues. They think they can fix everybody. We don't need that attitude. We need to stay out of things. A lot of times that's where we can help the most is by making sure we don't let things continue, we don't spread things, we don't talk about things. But love will help you keep your mouth shut. Proverbs 11:12 says, "He that is void of wisdom despiseth his neighbor, but a man of understanding holdeth his peace. A talebearer revealeth secrets, but he that is of a faithful spirit concealeth the matter." I thought we were against cover-ups in this church. Obviously, we are against covering up criminal activity. We are against covering things up in a way that could endanger other people. But let me tell you, when something is none of your business, you know what? When it's not anybody else's business, by all means, do a cover-up. By all means, conceal the matter. That's what you're going to do if you love people. If you love people, if you care about them, and you understand that everybody finding out about this, it's only going to make things worse, you know what you're going to do? You're going to keep your mouth shut. You're not going to tell other people about these things, but talebearers are always selective in what they run their mouths about, 100% of the time, because at the end of the day, the victims of their tongue are always people that they don't like. Always. You know why? Because when you love somebody, you naturally, instinctively, are going to keep your mouth shut about these things. You're going to stay out of these things. You're going to just do that by instinct. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, no amount of rules I give you tonight is going to help you if you don't love your neighbor. If you don't love your neighbor, you're probably going to mess up in these areas. But if you would just follow that one commandment of love your neighbor, you would know when to keep your mouth shut. You would know when to open your mouth. You would know when something needs to be revealed. You would know when something needs to be concealed. I'm telling you, loving God and loving your neighbor fixes everything. You will obey all the commandments if you have those two things down. But if you don't love people, you're going to really struggle in these areas. And so it's always people that they don't like. You know what? Because they are clearly, just one more time, they're poisoning the well, trying to get people thinking negatively about them. Proverbs 26:22 says, "The wounds of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down into the innermost parts of the belly." the things that people say, it hurts, and it hurts deeply. And I only said it once. Yeah, but they thought about it 1,000 times. Think about that. When we say things in anger, we say it one time, but people relive it over and over and over again. It's only said once. And then when people start talking about it, it's getting repeated. Everybody's thinking this now. You just said one thing, and you said it in a moment of anger. You might not have even really meant it. But you know what? You can't take it back. They can't unhear it. What's interesting about Proverbs 26:22, we have an identical verse in Proverbs 18:8. The wounds of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down into the innermost parts of the belly. 2 different times. It's in the Bible. Why? This is a very serious thing. It is a very painful thing, and the talebearer's poison doesn't just hurt the person they are speaking evil of, but it also hurts those who hear it. See, and you're going to be a lot of times you're going to be thinking negatively in ways about somebody that you shouldn't be thinking. Okay, we're supposed to love each other. We're supposed to think positively about each other. But now, because of what this person said, you now are thinking negatively about them when you shouldn't be. Things that you probably didn't even notice before. Now you're going to notice them and be annoyed by them. And, again, some of this stuff might seem innocent. For example, there was one time, several years ago, I was going to go to a preacher's conference. And I remember I told somebody I was going, and they're like, yeah, I'm not going to go tonight. I was like, oh, really? Why aren't you going to go? Brother so-and-so's preaching. What's wrong with brother so-and-so? And then they proceeded to tell me about some annoying habits they have when they preach. I had heard this person preach probably 2 or 3 other times, and I had never noticed these things. But then they was like, I can't stand watching him. It just drives me nuts watching him preach because he does this and this. And you know what? That night I went to go watch him preach, and I started watching, and sure enough, he did those things. And you know what? It annoyed the fire out of me, even though I had never noticed it before. And honestly, I don't know what he preached about. All I know is he did those 2 annoying things that were pointed out to me. I had never noticed them before. And now, to this day, and I haven't heard about him in a long time, but if I heard he was going to be preaching, I was like, oh man, I don't want to go hear him. I'm going to have to watch him do his weird stuff. It's not even bad. It's just, I've probably got a bunch of stuff like that I do. And you know what? And if I have weird things that I do, don't go telling everybody about it, because then they're going to notice it all the time, and it's going to drive them crazy. And in the meantime, I don't know about it, and so I can't even work on it. And, so we all have annoying things. We all have annoying things that we do. And if I wanted, I could get up here and I could just start making prophecies about all the things you all are going to do, all the things that you're going to say and act and do. We all have patterns. But the reality is, most of us, we don't really think about those things. We suppress those things. But when we start talking about them, and then other people start talking about it, and it becomes a conversation piece, now it's driving us crazy. And before we know it, we've got a whole group of people, we got to come talk to Pastor about this bad habit that he has. And then you all come and and I have like 6 guys come in the church and have an intervention with me, tell me about some weird habit that I have, and I feel so bad about what I do. I just, I give up on the ministry and I quit because I'm a sorry preacher, and, thousands of people don't get saved as a result of it because you all ran your mouth. I'm exaggerating a little bit. Maybe I go kill myself. I don't know, because I feel so bad. And then the reality is, one person noticed it and let it annoy them, and then they spread it around, and now the whole church is annoyed. And, it's just, everybody's got annoying things that they do. Now I can see everybody thinking about things. Yeah, he does do this. I just ruined all my preaching for everybody. Might as well just start all over and get all new church members now, because y'all aren't going to be able to put up with these things anymore. But again, verse 23, Proverbs 26 says, burning lips and a wicked heart are like a potsherd covered with silver dross. And a potsherd and silver dross, they're both worthless things that are rejected and thrown away. And so those burning lips and that wicked heart, they're worthless. They have no value. They accomplish nothing for good. Broken pottery and dross, that's the impurities that comes after the purification of silver. These are things that are taken and are cast away because they have no use. And let me tell you something, if you have the burning lips, if you have a tongue that is set on fire of hell, what you accomplish, the things that you say, those words, they have no value. There is nothing positive about them. They only do damage. Your wicked heart, it accomplishes nothing. It's something that needs to be thrown away. It's a bad thing. It's a very bad thing. You accomplish nothing. But yet, the gossips, they act like their information is the most important thing that you'll ever hear. It's like, no, your words are good for nothing. They're of no value. They're worthless. And so you should reject the testimony of the gossip. Their testimony is worthless. There's nothing edifying about what they're saying. And so you ought to reject it. And let me tell you something, two great lessons I've learned in life. Ignore your greatest critics and ignore your greatest praisers. Always. The people who praise you the most, they're going to be the first ones to stab you in the back, first off. So don't let what they say go to your head. Do not be lifted up by the flatterer. They're setting you up for failure. And then, of course, the haters, they're just trying to get you discouraged. Don't listen to either of them. And so my biggest flatterers online, I don't pay attention to them, just as I do not pay attention to my biggest haters online. What they say is irrelevant, and that's the way we ought to look at people like this. Verse 24, he that hateth dissembleth with his lips, and layeth up deceit within him. And hatred is why the person feels the need to speak of things they are not in any place to speak of. That's why you think you have to say these things. It's just hatred. The hatred just pulls it out of your heart and it makes it come from your mouth. And that's why you dissemble. And to dissemble, it means to be hypocritical, to assume a false appearance, to conceal the real fact, motives, intention, or sentiments under some pretense. And it's just amazing the way people will often speak so evil of one person, but yet it's always this way. They will show complete and total hypocrisy with another group that they like. And it's like, listen, you have no consistency. You're acting like you're taking a moral stand here in this situation, but you're not, because look at the rest of your life. It's completely inconsistent. I think what's going on here is you're dissembling with your mouth, and it's a result of hatred in your heart. And so these people, they won't give you the real reason they're speaking of things they shouldn't be speaking. Ladies, the next time another lady comes to you, did you see so-and-so's outfit yesterday? Why do you feel the need to tell me this? Why do you feel the need to talk to me about her wardrobe choices? Why is that? You do that kind of thing to people, guess what? They're not going to come gossiping to you anymore. But verse 25, when he speaketh fair, believe him not. For there are 7 abominations in his heart. And I'm telling you, these verses scare me. I will never forget one of our first Sunday night services, the lady in the church who said, I just want to praise you, Pastor Tommy. It scared me to death when she said that. Because I've read Proverbs many times, and it's like, that is terrifying when people say stuff like that. That same woman was cussing me out very shortly after that. It's weird, but it's just the way it is. There's 7 about, because you want to know why she was praising me? Control. That's why. Control. And one thing that gets me in trouble all the time, and you know what? It's going to keep getting me in trouble because it's just, I think I'm doing right in this, but I'm nice to people. I'm nice, I'm respectful, and I think a lot of people think that because I'm nice, I'm a pushover. But me being nice is just me being nice. And a lot of people, they're always thinking they're going to come here and then they are going to manipulate me into teaching something weird, doing something stupid. And it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And when I disagree with people, I don't foam at the mouth, I don't scream at them, I just, I'll calmly tell them. But they lose it all the time. And it's like they think because I'm nice, I'm going to be a pushover. But the reality is, I learn often, man, you acted like I would, because this is what they do. Pastor Tommy, you're the best Bible scholar I've ever heard. You really seem to get to the truth of the Scripture. You don't care what other people in the IFB say. You aren't affected by politics at all. You don't fear other people. You are true to what the Holy Spirit leads to people to in the Scriptures. And by the way, Pastor Tommy, what do you think of this weirdo doctrine that I believe? And you know what they do too? And I'll try to be nice and, hey, that's not right. This is actually what the Bible says. Then later, you're just scared. Political pressure. I've had people do that with me, who, because I didn't believe and I didn't teach really dumb stuff, that I was just, it was politically motivated. It's like, no, I just think that doctrine's stupid. And these are the same people that flattered me big time. I have dealt with that many times. I am usually the guy that everybody comes to who's wanting to, just, again, they're wanting to advance an agenda because they think I'm going to be nice to them. But at the end of the day, I can be nice, but that doesn't mean I compromise. And I don't compromise, and that's why eventually people lose it with me. Because they eventually figure out I'm not going to be able to manipulate this guy. And I've dealt with that ever. I've had people within a couple weeks talk about how I was the best pastor ever and to the worst pastor ever, literally. And the problem, the flattery was a way to control. They were trying to control me with their lips. Proverbs 26:26. Whose hatred is covered by deceit. His wisdom shall be showed before the whole congregation. Or his wickedness shall be showed before the whole congregation. Whoso diggeth a pit shall fall therein, and he that rolleth a stone, it will return upon him. And eventually these people, they're always going to get exposed, and they suffer the most. But sadly, they're not the only ones that get hurt. But it always, listen, the running of the mouth always comes back on them. And I have seen this so many times, and I'm thankful for this. I try not to ever burn bridges with people. I have had so many situations, and I don't keep track of all these things, and I'm not going to give names, I'm not going to give examples, but I could tell you so many people who have publicly railed on me, talked trash about me, who later they have come to me apologizing because of that. Because you know what? A lot of times they were around people, they were around mobs that were very critical of others, and they were a part of the lynch mobs and things, but you know what? Eventually, they're going to turn on you too. When you run with a pack of wolves and you act like a wolf yourself, eventually they're going to be chewing on you too. It happens all the time. It really does. And we just understand these people, and if you're going to be one of those people who are always going around trying to control everybody with your tongue, and you're hurting people with your tongue, it is going to come back on you. Because you're doing it to influence. And just understand, this circle that you are influencing, the group that you are influencing, if you are succeeding in influencing, you know what you're teaching them? To control with the tongue. You're teaching them to bite and devour and to do all these things. That's what you're teaching them. That's what you're building. And eventually they're going to do it to you. You have created this environment of control and manipulation, and it always ends up coming down and creaming you too. And so it's not worth it. It is not how we should handle things. And you're digging a pit and you're going to fall into it. These people always get exposed and suffer the most. Verse 28, a lying tongue hateth those that are afflicted by it, and a flattering mouth worketh ruin. So right there, they hate those. Hatred is the problem here. Again, not loving your neighbor. It's going to mess everything up. Proverbs 20 verse 19 says, he that goeth about as a talebearer revealeth secrets, therefore meddle not with him that flattereth with the lips. See, those who poison the well only create ruin. They don't build anything. It's amazing how many critics are out there that have literally never built anything, yet they know how everything should be run. They never pastor a church, but they know exactly how a church should be run. It's amazing how many people are out there like that. They've never done it. They've never accomplished anything in the long term. All these people always lose their family. They're not capable of long-term relationships. It's always 100% of the time a devastating ending for these people. Those who poison the well only create ruin. All of this, the reason people do all these things, at the end of the day, it's because they have bitterness in their heart. But we all got to watch out about having roots of bitterness. And there are many areas in my life. There are many situations, and sometimes the devil reminds me of things that have happened in the past. And if I'm not careful, if I do not guard my heart, I can let those things affect me in a negative way, and bitterness destroys an individual. And understand, while you are allowing the fruit of that bitterness to show as it comes from your mouth, just realize you're destroying yourself on the inside even more. While you think you're hurting other people, and while you probably are hurting other people, you're only hurting yourself even more. You're making yourself worse. You should think of your heart like a garden. And just like you must regularly be pulling weeds from your garden, or it's eventually going to get overgrown, and you're not going to have any fruit. You need to understand, in your heart, you've got to constantly be pulling weeds. You've got to get rid of those roots of bitterness, and because otherwise, while you might succeed in bringing some people down with your mouth, at the end of the day, you will suffer the most. You will have the greatest fall. It always ends up coming back on you, and I've seen it over and over again. And I think I'm really good at comebacks and, talking trash and all that kind of stuff. I think I'm really good at that stuff. But I have learned over the years, I've seen this so many situations when I have been attacked, when other godly people have been attacked, and you do nothing, God gets involved. And God does a way better job of handling things. He really does. If people in this church are doing wrong, if somebody does you wrong, if your coworker does you wrong, go tell God and let Him deal with it. He will handle them in ways that you never could. I've thought about ways before. It's like, you know what? I could really expose this person if I did this, this, and this. And it's just like, the Lord's like, no, you let me take care of them. And then like later, stuff happens like, that did so much damage and I couldn't have even thought about doing. You let God deal with these things. So because when you handle them, you suffer the most. You have the greatest fall. Take care of your heart and watch for these signs in your own life. And you know what? Never fear the gossip. Just learn to shut them down. Just learn to shut them down. It's like, no, this is not a place for that. I don't want to hear that, because they're not only are they going to hurt you, but they're going to hurt themselves. If you really want to help the gossip, shut them down. Shut them down so they will be ashamed that they tried, and maybe they won't go to the next person. But if you do, if they come and they talk a bunch of gossip to you and you're just thrilled to hear it and you become best friends after that, well, I just found out how to make friends. And they're going to go telling everybody else all that same stuff. And it's not healthy. But these kind of sermons, I think they need to be preached regularly in every church, because this is the easiest thing to fall into. And if you get anything out of this, just remember, if it's outside your area of authority, just keep your opinion to yourself. You and your wife, you guys can talk about it. If you see things going on in other marriages and other families and how they're raising kids, by all means, you all privately talk about it. Hey, they're doing good here. We should do this. They're doing bad here. Let's not do this. But you got to keep it to yourself. You cannot go talking to other people about it. You're going to be poisoning people against them, and you have no right to do that. It's not your place to do that. And at the end of the day, if we can just get control of this tongue, it'll make a world of difference. So with that, let's pray. Dear Lord, I pray that you'll help all of us in this area to guard our hearts. I pray, the Lord, that we will do regular maintenance on our hearts, that we'll keep those roots of bitterness out, that we'll keep our hearts clean, and Lord, most of all, that we will just keep our mouths shut when we need to keep them shut. Help us to just learn to love our neighbor. That would solve every one of these problems if we would have the right kind of love in our hearts for each other. And so help everybody to do that, and I pray you'll give them success. In your name we pray. Amen.